Hello everyone and welcome to Collaborative and Proactive Solutions, or CPS. This is a professional development run by Ben Simmons, Behaviour Support Coach out of the Kadena office. Before we start today, I'd like to remind you that this activity and professional development will be in a few parts, so please make sure that you take care of your own health. It's going to be a bit of a longer professional development today, so use the breaks in the presentation to get up, go get some water, have a walk, and distract yourself a little from the learning so you can come back and fully engage in the learning space. Beyond that, please make sure you have either hard copy or digital versions of the resources made available for this, which are called the ALSA, the problem solving plan, the Plan B cheat sheet, the drilling cheat sheet, the Plan B meeting checklist, and the plus minus interesting chart. Okay, without further ado, let's start. Before beginning today, I'd like to make a couple of acknowledgements, beginning with an acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge that the land I present on today is the traditional lands of the Nangiri people, and I want to pay respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. I would also like to acknowledge that the Nangiri people are the traditional custodians of the Clare Valley and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important today to the living Nangiri people. I'd like to acknowledge the deep feeling of attachment and respect, the spiritual relationship of the Aboriginal people to country. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge that this land is, was, and always will be Aboriginal land. Another acknowledgement is Dr. Ross Green. He's the founder of the CPS model, and this presentation is an adaptation of his work. He has presented the CPS model to not only schools, but disciplinary institutions and psychiatric wards, psychiatric holdings all over the world. He's an American clinical psychologist, and he has written many books, a few of which you might find interesting are Lost and Found, Lost at School, and The Explosive Child. All three are parts of the CPS model and all bring something a little bit different. And finally, a little bit about Dr. Green. He was on the faculty at Harvard Medical School for over 20 years and is now one of the directors of the nonprofit Lives in the Balance, which provides a whole range of free web-based resources for the CPS model. If anything today does engage you or spark some interest, or you want to know more, that's an excellent place to go looking for more research. They do have some peer-reviewed articles on there. In addition, they have a YouTube channel that you can go to for examples or more thorough talks from Dr. Green himself. So let's start today with what is CPS? So collaborative and proactive solutions is about changing our focal point for behaviour, changing our lens, looking at behaviour as though it is as a part of a deficit. It's that students are lacking something to be able to get them to behave adaptively or appropriately, if you prefer. This models the same way we do interventions around literacy and numeracy. It acknowledges that behaviour is a part of a lacking skill that all students can do well. It's not about them wanting to do well. It's not that they have the skills and then don't want to. It's that they want to, but they lack the skills too. Beyond that, it's also a model about teaching teachers the process of being able to talk through challenges with students and to identify what are the barriers, what is the lacking skill for a student with the student. It's about having the student engaged in their own intervention. It's about teaching you how to do that with them. And finally, CPS is a coaching model. It's not about telling a student You are going to do this program because I've decided that this is the thing you need help with. It's about working together to solve a problem together. I'm not going to lie, this takes more time than just telling a student what to do. But ultimately, this works. CPS is an evidence-based model. So let's start with some of the things we're going to be doing today. To start with, I'm going to outline CPS itself, some of the stuff that CPS is based on, and where we were and where we're going to when it comes to behaviour, and as well as some of the more foundational parts of behaviour itself and the CPS model. Then we're going to go through the actual skills in CPS, starting with identifying unsolved problems, using some of the tools of CPS like the ALSUP, the Assessment of Lagging Skills and Unsolved Problems, and the Problem-Solving Planning Chart. And finally, we're going to be looking at how to apply what we've learned today in your classroom. These examples will work excellent today if you have a student in mind that you would like to try something like this with. They do not have to be students that are in a Tier 3 intervention. You can work through the ALSUP or the CPS model with any student who has a lagging skill or an unsolved problem. So let's have a look at where we started. So contemporary school discipline is about punishing students who have challenging behaviours. And in reality, if school discipline was working for students with challenging behaviours, we wouldn't be at this point. This point being that each term, on average, there is over 3,500 suspensions, almost 150 exclusions, and yearly about 1 expulsion, on top of countless take-homes, detentions, office referrals, missing out on lunches, and other punishments for challenging behaviours. And these numbers go up every single year. So what's it telling us? Is that the traditional school system isn't working for students specifically with social or emotional developmental delay. And the only reason that it is working for students that don't have these challenges is that in reality, they don't need it. They have the skills already to react adaptively. So if it's not working for the students who have challenging behaviour and it's not needed by the students who can react adaptively, why do we still have it? Beyond this, for teachers specifically, in the first 3 years of teaching, about 25% or 1 in 4 teachers will leave the profession. Moreover, 75% leave within the first 5 years, and overwhelmingly, they attribute this to challenging behaviour. They say it's stress or teacher burnout, and these things stem from difficulties around challenging behaviours. So if our current school discipline practices are largely orientated towards punishing behaviours and rewarding the ones we do not like, and not solving an underlying concern, what is the point of them? And I might hear you say, well, Ben, that's all well and good, but if it's not working, where's your solution? Well, this is my solution. First, we need help in identifying students that have that developmental delay. We need to be able to identify the deficit and then put in interventions in increments that those students can handle. We need to treat challenging students as though they have a developmental delay and apply the same approach we do for those that are having challenges with numeracy and literacy. If we continue to treat challenging students as though they are somehow unmotivated, attention-seeking, manipulative, or limit testing, or any other hypothesis that we put on their behaviour, we will continue to rely on punitive measures to manage their behaviour, and they just won't do better. Because consequences and punishment do not teach the skills that these students lack. So I'd like you to start with your own beliefs about behaviour. Why do you think that students have challenging behaviour? What about those who don't have challenging behaviour? Why don't they have it? It's important for you to examine this because how you view behaviour guides how you interact with students who are exhibiting challenging behaviour. And ultimately, it's how you deal with their behaviour when the going gets tough. CPS is about changing how we view students' behaviour. It's about changing it from students are pushing my boundaries, they're just manipulating, they just want to get something, into this student lacks an important thinking skill. This is true of students that are not only neurotypical, but neurodivergent as well. Students with ASD, oppositional defiance disorder, SB, personality disorder, including any undiagnosed student as well. Challenging behaviour is big and small. So it's not limited by class, race, or creed. It can be done with any student. So some of the questions I often get are, what really is the difference between students do well if they can and students do well if they want to? They seem like they're exactly the same thing. Well, when we believe that a student isn't doing well because they don't want to, then the primary role of the adult is to give an intervention that makes them want to. It's about giving them an incentive, a reward to be successful, or a punishment when they're not. This is what we do currently. If we believe that students don't want to do well, so we punish them with detentions or suspensions. The difference here is, alternatively, if the assumption is that a student could do well, but there is something that impedes them, then the role of the adult is about assisting the student to develop the skills that they are lacking in order to react adaptively to that challenge. So how do we do this? Well, first we need to assume that students know right from wrong and they have all the motivation they already need to do well. And it's our job to figure out the behaviour, the skill that is behind the behaviour that is standing in the student's way. If you identify what skills a student is lacking, then you identify why they are challenging. You will also know what skills they need to learn to be better equipped to anticipate and respond to those challenges adaptively. We need to get out of this headset of challenging kids lack motivation to do well. They are not attention-seeking, manipulative, coercing, or limit testing. Hands up, how many of you have gone, that kid's manipulating you? Or, oh, I feel like they're just pushing my boundaries today. Or don't do that, that's giving them what they want. Or they're just searching for attention, they just want adult attention. I'm guilty of every single one of those and way more. And that's okay. But now it's about trying to really challenge ourselves and our own beliefs about, is that student being manipulative, or is it really that this is the way that they know how to get what they need? So I'll be honest, especially when it comes to manipulation, that requires a lot of very complex thinking skills that lots of our students just do not have. at the time in which they're doing it. These challenging students lack the skills to not be challenging. So this is why your students are challenging in very certain situations. They're not challenging all the time, are they? I'm sure you've had a few examples. Maybe even you have a student right now who is an absolute delight for you. But the second you get in a TRT, or the second another adult comes in, that's it, they're gone. You won't have them for the rest of the day. That's a lagging skill. So if we know that, how are we going to build that skill in the students? It is easy to understand why rewarding and punishing a challenging kid may not make things better or help them learn essential skills. Because when you reward or punish a challenging behavior, what are you actually doing to change how they're responding to that situation? All you're doing is providing more motivation to try and do the thing that they already can't do. This is why we need CPS in our schools. That is the why we need CPS. Here are some advantages. So I'm not going to lie, this is not an easy or a fast way to deal with behavior. But it works. Interventions that aren't working always are more time-consuming than those that do. CPS is just time-consuming in a different way. It's very front-loaded. But would you rather do all the work right now to have CPS work in your classroom than to constantly do something that is not effective over and over and over again for a student's entire schooling career? CPS specifically helps students solve problems and develop skills to negotiate and advocate for their learning needs. CPS helps students reduce challenging behavior episodes by identifying the skills they're lacking and the specific expectation they're having difficulty meeting. And then it equips them with the skills to be able to negotiate and advocate for themselves around the intervention for that behavior. CPS works in two ways. First, by targeting that behavior that is in deficit for a student, but also helping them develop skills in a range of tangential abilities such as negotiation or debating, arguing, advocating for themselves. So just by participating in the process, it is teaching students more skills that they might be lacking. And finally, teachers who use CPS report a higher sense of agency in their work. They report feeling less stressed, and they find coming up with interventions for students easier as they participate more in the CPS model. And finally, CPS is one of the few evidence-based models of changing behavior for students. So the real secret to changing behavior is that behavior is very predictable, which is a good thing. When behavior is predictable, we can identify the whens, wheres, and whos of why that behavior is happening, which is the best benefit we can hope for, because that means that we can solve a problem proactively. If I go back to my previous example of getting a TRT into the classroom, we've all had that one student who we know is going to absolutely go haywire the second there is a TRT in our classroom. So what have we done to proactively deal with that problem? It's okay if we haven't thought of it that way before. I'm guilty of it 1,000 times over. I know there was going to be an issue, but I just didn't have time, or I didn't think about it, or I just wasn't aware it was going to be an issue for this particular TRT. It's about making sure that we can have, it's about making sure that we know a student well enough, and then we seek their advice as well on what are the behaviours that are challenging for them. So CPS is an empathic system of modifying challenging behaviours. It posits that all students can do well and want to do well. However, there's barriers to preventing them from doing so. And moreover, CPS acknowledges that these behaviour errors can be the cause of stress and distress for everybody involved, including the student. I want you to think about all the different people that you could ask about a particular young person that you have in mind. What would they say? Is that thing predictable? Would they solve the issue at hand if they had their way? Often we come at problems of challenging behaviour with answers that are generic or do not fit the needs of the student. This in turn fails at not solving the issue for students and begins the cycle of distrust and failure experienced by the young person and their stakeholders. I understand that students with challenging behaviour can be and are challenging simply by their nature. However, if we confront them with a fixed mindset and predisposed or ordained answers to their problems, they will switch off, because that is what adults have always been doing to them for their entire life. And so far, it hasn't been helping them. So if we continue to come at them, telling them what to do, it is going to continue to have this cyclical effect of them not wanting to engage. Before we get into the particulars of the CPS model, I do want to go through a little bit more around behaviour itself. What I've brought up is the internalized self-talk system, or IFS. And this is about how students respond when they do have behaviour and when they've been met with a challenge that exceeds their ability to respond adaptively. Now, if you look at this picture on the far left-hand side, you can see that there is a student who's clearly being told off. How do you know they're being told off? Well, they have that look about them. It's their head is shrunken, they're bent over slightly, they're looking away. These are all predictable indicators of a child experiencing shame. Now, shame and guilt are two sides of one coin, and I'd first like to start by examining those. We'll start with shame. We'll start with guilt. Guilt is I did something wrong. That's me focusing on behaviour. We get over guilt pretty quickly. That's because I didn't like the behaviour, or the behaviour I did was wrong. That's a focus on the other, on something outside of our control, or something in our control, but not internally related to us. Whereas shame is I am something wrong. I am the thing that's wrong. How many of your students do you think experience shame over guilt when they get punished? As opposed to, yeah, I did that and that was wrong. I mucked up. I'll do better next time. That's guilt. Or when they get punished, I am bad. I am no good. I am stupid. I am not worthy. That is shame. As with understanding anything in behaviour, it's important to understand the triggers, the impacts of behaviour triggers. Our body will react to shame in one of 4 ways, and see if this tracks with any of your students that you find challenging. The first way is when we've had that shame reflex triggered, when we're telling ourselves that I am something wrong, you can withdraw, you can isolate, run away. It's that freeze reflex. You can participate in avoidance. This is that denial, no, that wasn't me. Or numbing, drugs, alcohol, food, or distraction. You can attack yourself, tell yourself you're an idiot, no good, I'm stupid, or engage in self-harm. Or you can attack others, blaming, lashing out, manipulating, turning the tables. How many of your students that when they are punished in our traditional system experience 1, 2, 3, or all of these? I can think of a few. Students are affected by this biology just as much as anyone else. When they experience this shame reflex, this is how they're going to react. So part of our job is to make sure that our interventions are not triggering this shame reflex. And we do that through having these frank discussions and open discussions with our students about their behaviour. Now, this is only a really small part of the restorative journeys practice. Please, if you would like to know more about shame, the shame reflex, or any of the restorative practice stuff, please have a look at the links on the screen. I would highly recommend it as an adjunct to this training. Now, when we deal with any particular behaviour, you only really have 3 choices. Plan A, B, and C is what they're called. Plan A, you're going to tell them what to do. Oi, get off of that monkey bar. Or you need to go sit in the corner. Or whatever your preferred flavour of telling a student what to do is. That is the unilateral imposition of adult will. I am not saying that there is no place for this. There is. When safety is concerned, when you just need a student to just do this now because they are somehow in danger or it's somehow affecting learning, or when it just needs to happen now, plan A is totally reasonable. It's when plan A is all we do that we get ourselves in trouble. Skipping over the middle one for now, we're going to look at plan C. Plan C is about putting aside the current expectations for now. Not forever, but for now. Plan C is a student who has absolutely lost it because you've given them a test and they weren't prepared and they didn't get to study and now they're going to fail and they've gotten themselves into this cycle. And you've gone, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, take a deep breath. We'll put this aside for now. You know it's coming. How about we do it tomorrow? This is the biggest fear I find educators have with the Plan B model, with the CPS model, is that they think that if we're not dealing with it right away, then somehow we are no longer dealing with it. It's not about responding right away. It's about making sure that our response is in line with the needs of the student. Yes, we need to do this test, but we don't need to do it right now. Come and tell me what's up, what's the problem. We'll solve it together, then you can do the test. Why would I want you to do this test right away if it's going to cause you anxiety and stress? Finally, Plan B. Plan B is basically what we're going to be talking about for the next probably 50 minutes. Let's be honest, I like to talk. Plan B is about working through the skill deficit with students or young people as a problem-solving team. There are two types of Plan B. One Plan B is proactive, which is the majority of what we'll be talking about today. And the other Plan B is emergency or reactive Plan B. Plan B, emergency Plan B, is what you do in the moment. We've all had those curveballs being thrown at us in the classroom where a student has acted out of character or inexplicably, or you didn't know that that was going to trigger a student, and you just need to put on the brakes. Whoa, what are we doing here? This emergency Plan B is about putting into place the CPS model, but in a responsive manner. It's about taking that moment to identify why this student is finding this task challenging, gaining information, and developing a strategy that de-escalates the situation right away and allows for participants to remain safe. And sometimes you might decide that that also includes part of Plan A, and that's okay. But what I want to focus on predominantly today is proactive Plan B. This is about identifying students' behaviour before they engage in that behaviour. Identify where their lacking skills are and the situations in which those deficits might occur, and planning for a student to have experiences that develop that skill or appropriate coping strategies for that behaviour. And to have the student come alongside with us when we do this planning to help them reach the goal that they also want. Right, before we talk about the actual model of CPS, I would like you to, we're going to stop here. I'd like you to take your first break as we've been going for almost 40 minutes. And go have a walk around, have a coffee, and when you come back, please make sure you have access to all of the required sheets. So you'll need access to the ALSUP, the problem-solving plan, Plan B cheat sheet, drilling cheat sheet, the Plan B meeting sheet, and the plus-minus interesting chart. Thank you. I'll see you in part 2.